how did you get started with Reparations Works?
I've known Lucy since maybe 2014, 2015. I was in an organization called Philly Road Justice, and it wasn't during this time period. It's not unique in this way, but it was highly activated by the list of high-profile police murders in 2014, 2015. In that time period, almost every week, there were like very high-profile Black children that were like on the news all of the time. I was in an organization that was primarily responsive to police murders via direct action. This is sit-ins, this is challenging city council and the mayor and the governor and police, the fraternal order of police, things of that nature. This is like what we were doing. And because the nature of the actions were very confrontational, a lot of people were slow to support the work that we were doing because they didn't like the way that it sounded or looked like and things of that nature. We met Lucy because Lucy was working at the Friend Center in Center City and was one of the only people that were willing to give us space to meet. So through Lucy, we got access to the Friend Center, which is where we had real justice meetings. And Lucy not only gave us access to that space, but she would like actively attend our meetings. And she would even come to some of the protests sometimes. So I know Lucy generally through that period. And we had been on and off in relation to each other, but we weren't in like constant communication. In 2020, I was indicted for participation in what they call the George Floyd protest. And yeah, this is the end of 2020. And this is a very long story, but I was on house arrest until 2023. People thought that because of the lack of like hard evidence and things of that nature, people thought that the reason why I was taking so long is they were going to eventually just throw the thing out. But I still ended up being incarcerated in 2024. So I was on house arrest the whole time. And then I still went to prison in 2024. This is a much longer story than what I'm saying here, but in context to this story, when I was inside, a lot of organizations that I was in attempted to hold on to me. My school that really attempted to hold on to me, which I really loved them for that. The teachers and my students primarily really tried to hold on to me. But because of the federal mandate that because of the level of offense, I had to be released from the school district. It wasn't the school decision or any student or any community member. It was the federal order that I couldn't like teach anymore. To some people, even more than the incarceration itself, I think that people were very heartbroken, including myself, that I was removed from teaching. This was like a really large heartbreaker for pretty much everybody involved. And really like abrupt, like no like formal like moving on thing. And I had been connected to students still to this day. There were actually students that I taught that attended my hearing, because everybody had fingers crossed and were anticipating, best case scenario. So anyway, all of this happens. And while I was incarcerated, people are attempting to sort of figure out what can I do next? What's going on? And a couple people had emailed me or wrote me about an opportunity with Lucy, apparently. So Lucy's co-director at the time was stepping down and people were recommending me for that position. I have no idea what this is, by the way. I'm not super familiar with Lucy's work at this time. I know like vaguely what she was doing, but I'm not super familiar. So people kept like alluding to this thing and I'm like, I don't know what this is. So at the end of 2024, I'm released, I'm home, and people say like, hey, have you talked to Lucy yet? It felt like a big secret that I wasn't in on. Like, what is going on here? So I finally interact with Lucy and I'm like, hey, people keep telling me to talk to you. Like what is going on? And then finally we get to like the job of co-directing Reparation Works with her. And that's essentially how I got here. I think that I probably would have maybe thought about it a little bit longer and maybe took a little bit more time to get reacclimated after going through the last, few years. But one, I needed something to sustain myself. And two, at the very least, I was offered something from a person that I know and I have at least a trajectory of history engaging with her that sort of quelled a little bit of concern around director level work. So yeah, so that's essentially how I even got here in the first place. Very kind of random. You never know when your name will pop up, but so that was really interesting. And I'm grateful for Lucy and Keisha for considering me at the time, which was really cool. And yeah, I was, very transparent with my interview process and engaging there. And I was joining Reparations as a person with an abolitionist understanding of history and how reparations should work. And I was like, maybe that won't work. Who knows? But they were very open to that. And here I am. And just to add, I only say that because the dominating understanding of reparations is that it is some level of paycheck to amend the crime specifically for chattel slavery, which I believe is like very narrow and does not sort of take into account to things that happened after chattel slavery or the conditions that developed chattel slavery. So I was coming to it with a different understanding of history and how we organize around that, and they were very open to that. And here I am. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Definitely. Yeah. I could complain a lot, and maybe I should. This is word to my therapist, maybe. But maybe I should engage in that a little bit more. But I really feel deeply like blessed and like lucky. This is not the average, person's carceral story. I was like deeply supported the entire process, and I just really want to foreground that as something that separates the horrors of an experience like this. The average person goes through something like this, guilty or innocent, with two people max in the courtroom for support. So yeah, really grateful for that.
I love what you're bringing, that abolitionist perspective to reparations, that reparations is very narrow, that it doesn't take into consideration like what brought about chattel slavery and how it affected people afterwards.